Hold on a second. I got to make sure I'm all set up. Things are looking good. Things are looking good. What's up, P-Man? Good morning, everyone. Let's Bitcoin. Let's Bitcoin. Matt. Good morning, P-Man. Good morning, everyone. Indeed. Tom with a good morning, ladies and gents. Ben, good morning, team. Sean recommends good morning, all. It's the same deal. I am not on the Bitcoin Magazine YouTube this morning. I'm only on Rumble. Please confirm if I'm on Rumble. And I believe I'm correctly, as I'm seeing all these comments broadcasting without fail to my normal YouTube channel. So there you go. There you go. There you go. And if you'll notice, we got Tommy, who has provided us with a new logo today. So look up in the corner and you can see a beautiful little 8-bit Mario style logo called the Breakup. So it's pretty fun. I love it. I love it. And just before we get going, we got to remind you all that we got a sunrise here, right? We got a total sunrise. We got a Bitcoin running. So what's up with us, guys? We just got to have some coffee and talk about what's new, right? Excellent. Hello, my name is says cool logo. Thanks, man. It's pretty neat, huh? I love the 8-bit aesthetic. Daniel is a excellent source this morning for our show content. You'll see that he shared an article with me about something that I said a long time ago about Bob Dylan and JFK. So we're going to be talking about the article a bit. Someone broke it down way more than I ever did, and it was great. So there you go. King Mansa Musa with having a croissant and thinking about how good Bitcoin is. That is a perfect picture, King Mansa Musa. I bet if the real King Mansa Musa was alive today, he would be doing exactly what you're doing. The richest man to have ever lived would probably be eating a croissant somewhere off the coast of Morocco or wherever it was that he lived, thinking about how great Bitcoin is. And by the way, we're going to be talking about terraforming King Mansa Musa's old kingdom today. Believe it or not, that is actually the content today. We're going to be talking about what happens when you go back to a desert and you terraform it. It's all about terraformation today. The sneaker, didn't see it coming, actual implementation of Bitcoin standard will create amazing terraformation technologies, which I'm gonna tie that thread together today. It's a lot of fun. But first, before we talk about real news of terraformation of Africa and Bitcoin citadels, we've got to talk about the fake news coming straight out of Moscow time. So The Economist, someone actually, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and it's another one of these people who, like, he's really old, and he's one of my mentors, so it's not that simple, right? But he's like 80, right? And basically he jokes that only things that are in The Economist are real, right? And he knows it's not true, but he still likes to think that way. Now, The Economist seems like it's way behind. And yesterday we talked about how bro science was way ahead. But here's the stunning revelations from The Economist. Stunning. This is why people subscribe by the millions. With mental health disorders rising, a growing number of scientists are investigating how nutrition influences the brain. What? I didn't know that. So this one's an oldie, but a goodie. All right, this one's old. It's a few years old. I had never seen it before, but with all the talk of UFOs, it's sort of coming back. This is a real headline someone wrote once. Vladimir Putin's war threats are why aliens haven't made first contact. Expert claims. Experts doing great. This one's great. This one is just beautiful. It's not quite hang it on the Louvre like we talked about yesterday, right? That one turned out to be fake, by the way, just so everyone knows. The one yesterday with the it was pregnant men are more affected by global warming or something like that. It was beautiful. So it's fake. We were not sure. We said we're not sure it's real. We said we can't tell the difference. So someone confirmed somewhere that it was indeed fake. But this one is actually real. but it's not quite at the level of hanging in the Louvre for fake news yet, but it's pretty good. And it's just a straight up racism at heart of U.S. failure to tackle deadly heat waves. Experts warn that racist weather. We love that racist weather. Now, of course, you've always got to have your run-of-the-mill Trump is a racist headlines, right? So I went on MSNBC for a few Moscow time headlines this morning. And of course, MSNBC never fails. They just never fail. So here it is. Trump's fight against DC judge venue mirrors his post-2020 bigotry. When Trump's in legal or political trouble, he often points a finger at people of color. Racist. Now we've got a whole bunch of nice Trump headlines, so I'm just going to share them up because they're just a lot of fun, right? We can always love Trump's effect on people's brains and what it can do. And here's what MSNBC thinks is happening. Donald Trump's defense strategy is an insult to his intelligence. The Donald Trump is stupid meme. Donald Trump hasn't listen. So this guy's name, his actual Twitter handle, and he writes on MSNBC, and his name is SpeechBoy71. All right. So SpeechBoy71 on MSNBC has lots to say about Trump's intelligence. He says, Donald Trump hasn't exactly impressed the world with his intelligence. SpeechBoy71 argues. And to get out of trouble, Cohen says he's going to need a jury to give him a pass for not being that smart. He's not smart, guys. He's an idiot. He's such an idiot, right? I wish he was a little smarter. Here's another one. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, COVID's back. MSNBC reminded me of that, right? The next COVID surge is here. We can't ignore it. Emergency room doctor, someone says number of COVID patients showing up for treatment is ticking back up, and that given the awfulness of long COVID, Americans need to let go of the idea that mild cases of COVID are no big deal. You need to let it go. Guys, if you get some COVID and you get over it, you got to let go of that idea. You need to embrace the idea that it's not mild. We got long COVID, okay? You can die forever. You can just be COVID-y forever. All right, so MSNBC, between not talking about Hunter Biden, letting you know how racist Trump is and how stupid he is, they've got to remind you that COVID's also back, just by chance, right? Just by chance. The alien stories are done. We got some COVID stories. That's fine. So now we got one more. This one's pretty good. Special Counsel Jack Smith has already indicted Donald Trump twice, but that doesn't mean the investigations or the revelations are over. As Steve Bannon writes, take the search warrant of Trump's Twitter account, for example. Right? So now they're going to go into his Twitter account, right? They're searching his actual Twitter account now. So that's what's going on, right? That's what these people are up to. So now, one of the most amazing things as well about what's going on with Trump now, and I didn't know this, this is from Jonathan Turley. Can you believe this? Just try and hold this in your mind for a second. Okay. Just absolutely try to keep this in your brain. Now, I'm warning you, your brain is going to try and jump out of your head, right? Because this is so crazy that I don't really know how to explain it, but it's part of the actual subpoena for the Twitter records, right? So this is part of the subpoena. Okay. Jonathan Turley says, one of the more interesting elements to the opinion on the subpoena for Trump's Twitter records is found on page 5, footnote 2. The court says that the district court found Trump was a flight risk from prosecution if he knew about the subpoena. It is hard to understand that finding. Trump is one of the most recognized faces in the world. Where would he flee? Moreover, he has been sued and charged around the country without going on the lam. Yet the district court cited the flight risk in ordering this secret subpoena because people didn't know about this Twitter thing. I didn't know about it. He also has 24/7 Secret Service protection, and the court was afraid that he would lose and then evade his security team, don a disguise, and hop on a fishing boat to Cuba. That's what they think. So it's like, oh, he's guilty, and now he's gonna go hide from the Secret Service. He's gonna run down the streets of DC. Look out, guys! I'm out of here. He's going to get on a boat and he's going to go to Cuba. Maybe he'll stay in a Trump Tower somewhere. They actually think he's a flight risk, right? So if you were wondering about the corruption of the U.S. judicial system. Now, remember, we're just openly out here saying, yeah, he's not going to get a fair trial in D.C., but let's don't worry, the Supreme Court's going to take care of it, right? So imagine that this is the country we live in. This is what it's come to, and it couldn't get any funnier, as far as I can tell. Now, there's even, you get Politico here. So just think about it. You get a whole news site, MSNBC, thinking that it's normal that Trump is a flight risk and is going to run away, spouting probably racist shit as he runs away looking for the boat, right? That's what's going to happen. Meanwhile, Politico, right? So one of the most in the bag mockingbird assets out there, funnily enough, wrote a tweet and a headline the other day that they had to take down. All right. So here's the original tweet that they wrote yesterday. GOP House Oversight Chair James Comer rolled out a new memo identifying over $20 million in payments for entities or individuals in Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan to Biden family members. But the memo doesn't show a direct payment to Joe Biden. Right. Okay. So that's the first headline. Already going out of its way to make something to make it make sense to anybody. Right. So all this money is going to the Biden family. That's normal, but it's not going to Joe. Right. So, but even that was too much. They had to correct it. And this is the new headline. Right. The new headline is House Oversight Chair James Comer rolled out a new memo detailing foreign payments to Biden family members as part of a sprawling investigation. Right. So no more details. It's just a sprawling investigation. Don't worry about it. So the thing with Politico changing it this way, first of all, so we don't even know what's going on in the courts. We're just accepting Trump's not going to get a fair trial. At the same time, I don't even know if this $20 million is new or the old corruption or new. Is it brand new? I don't know. There's no way to tell how much corruption there actually is. Is this the same money are we just talking about the same money again? Or is this new money? But that's the state we're in. We don't even know where the corruption begins and ends. We don't know if this is new. I don't know if this is new. I talk about this every day. I don't know if this $20 million is the same as last week, the same as 3 months ago. Is it? I actually don't know. Now they're saying it's a new memo that identifies over 20 million, but is it different? Now, it doesn't make a difference. One crime is equal in this case to 100 crimes. If they did it once, it's just as bad. So there's no way to imagine that they aren't more than that, right? So Politico saying this. Now, here's what Martyr Maid said about it, right? So we can see we're not getting any fair trials in DC. We're just sort of openly laughing about the lack of fair trials. They're actually submitting things that Trump is a flight risk. The most famous man in the world. He might be. I mean, Michael Jordan is still kind of up there because of the shoes. Could Michael Jordan go on the lam? Could he just like go around the world? He's 6'6", and he's the most recognizable person in the world. Could Trump with the hair? Like he'd have to shave his head or something. Imagine Trump with like a shaved head trying to hide in like Mexico. Or China, right? And Trump is tall, right? He's 6'something. He's one of the taller presidents of all time. I think Obama is the tallest president of all time. I think Obama was like 6'4" or something. But Trump is up. Trump's a big guy and a good athlete, by the way. If you've ever seen Trump throw a football or something, he threw a couple of opening pitches in baseball. He had a heater, man. He could chuck it. So and then we get the news here that's this bad, and this is what Martyr Maid says about Politico and what's going on. And he says that the corruption of the media is really overwhelming and totally irreparable. Everyone at Politico understands perfectly well that bribes often go to family members and that direct payments from foreign sources to Joe Biden himself are not necessary. They know about the text message from Hunter to his daughter where he admits to paying for everything for his family for 30 years and says directly that Joe Biden makes Hunter give half of his income to him. They are expecting us to believe that tens of millions of dollars from foreign sources was funneled through a network of at least 20 shell companies to Biden family members, as well as associates, girlfriends, even on one of the little grandchildren, in exchange for the mere illusion of access to Joe Biden, and that Joe was blissfully unaware of the whole decade-long operation, asking no questions about how his family members were raking in tens of millions of dollars without having real jobs. They want you to think Hunter was just making things up, when he sent messages to Chinese partner threatening that he and his father, who is sitting right next to me waiting for your call, would use their influence against him if he didn't send the money they agreed to. And they want you to believe that when Joe Biden said repeatedly and unequivocally that he had never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings, period, that it had simply slipped his mind that he'd met with many of Hunter's partners, had business dinners with them, and was present in person or on speakerphone at no fewer than 20 business meetings, according to his own sworn testimony from 2 witnesses who were in the meetings. And they all know that at least half of you will believe it, and that's enough for Politico's purposes. The House Oversight Committee is unearthing reams of straightforward proof of bribery, racketeering, and money laundering, but the press covers it up. The Biden DOJ covers it up, and Trump was impeached thanks to a leak from a CIA spy planted in the White House just for asking questions about it. I really don't know how anyone still deludes themselves into thinking there is a political solution to this, right? And Glenn Greenwald adding to that, saying, Glenn Greenwald did his whole show on this stuff last night, talking about the global meddling and what's going on, and Victoria Nuland and what real interference looks like was the actual headline. And what he mentions here is that, and the point of it comes from this guy, A Newsman, who brought the sort of summary of the entire show, and says that national security journalism works and just how integral. So Glenn Greenwald explains how national security journalism works and how integral soulless corporate media journalists are to the advancement of U.S. foreign policy. And he goes on to talk a bit about what's going on with Vivek, right? Of course, that because Vivek is opposed to the CIA, FBI, DHS, and other big federal agencies that want to dictate how big tech operates and what political opinions Americans can have, of course, is now being called a right-wing racist fascist, of course. So a lot of this, just this corporate and public merger of power that RFK is talking about a lot, and that Glenn Greenwald is talking about here, this merger of corporate journalism with national security apparatus. And where did it all start, right? Where did this really come from? Maybe World War II. We saw a lot of priming of the public, right, with what was going on. But I want to bring up a more interesting one, and this comes from Daniel's sharing of a pretty interesting breakdown. Now, let me give you a bit of a history of some stuff for the breakup. For those who weren't around in the early days, last November, when Tucker Carlson did an episode on what happened to Nixon, right? It started with what happened to Nixon. Right. So the episode started with saying, do you know who the most popular president in the history of the United States is? And the answer is, it's Richard Nixon. Right. So Richard Nixon in the 1972 election won by a greater margin than any president has ever won. And his electoral college numbers were the top, and his overall wins throughout the country were no one has ever done better. No one has ever done better than Richard Nixon in 1972. And within a few short years, he was eliminated from the presidency. And that was his second term, right? So he had already been president for 4 years, and this was his second term. And so Tucker was asking, well, how did this happen, right? How did it happen that the most powerful, popular president in the history of the Union, how was he eliminated in a few short years? And why did Watergate happen? So what he talked about there was that Watergate was more or less a fake news story, but the true beginning of how Watergate even happened. How did it happen that you had a deep state media that was going to collude against a US president? Where did this formula come from? Well, in that same episode, Tucker brought everything back to the JFK assassination. And it was at that time that I made a prediction that the 2024 election and the fourth turning and the hyper Bitcoinization and everything we're experiencing, the end of World War III, will actually be related to the JFK assassination, that the story of the JFK assassination actually ends with hyper Bitcoinization. And the reason for that is this merger of media and corporate power and public power. So putting these things together, we see the formula of it in the days right after the Kennedy assassination. So in 1963, he's assassinated, but everything that's important happens in 1964. And at the time, it also happened that Doomberg, so this became a big deal. So everyone started talking about it, right? So everyone started talking about what was going on with um, JFK, what was going on with banking, what was going on with the ability to run a deep state program the way they had done to hide the murder of a president before everyone's eyes. So here's what Doomberg wrote that day. In his mind, it had everything to do with the cancer of corruption and what happens when corruption becomes obvious to some people, like this president was killed, but it was clearly not by a lone gunman, and what happened. And of course, Americans never had the chance to answer it. And so Doomberg wrote the following, right? He says, as the cancer of corruption grows, so too does the government's need to corral the outrage and the activities of ordinary citizens. In this regard, one weapon supersedes them all: the ability to control how ordinary citizens transact in the economy. So what he's saying here is that the anxiety that happened after JFK's assassination and people asking questions was really the big problem, right? So he goes on. He says, as Ben Hunt brilliantly describes in his excellent piece In Praise of Bitcoin, the goal of the US government is to see and preside over all the money in the world, because once that power is obtained, it's game over. Here's a key message, emphasis in the original. That's really all it is. That's what anti-money laundering regulations are all about. That's what KYC regulations are all about. That's what report on foreign bank and financial accounts, FBAR regulations, are all about. That's what the Treasury-led Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, SWIFT, is all about. That's what the Bank Secrecy Act is all about. None of these programs are really about taxes. None of these programs are really about catching crooks or fighting terrorists. All of these programs are really about information for information's sakes, regarding the greatest source of power in the world and the raison d'etre of every government on earth: money. Buried in the noise and drama surrounding the ongoing collapse of the blah, blah, they're going into the crypto sector. So the point here is that here I'll get shock of 9/11 was leveraged to roll back basic freedoms in the name of security, so too will the deep criminality exposed in the digital asset space be used to justify a terrifying shift. So here he's talking, this was written in the fallout of SBF. So I'm going to skip what he's saying, that we don't care about these regulators, right? So the point here is that he was making this connection between what happened immediately after JFK was assassinated. And indeed, that's where SWIFT comes from. That's where Know Your Customer comes from. That's where the Bank Secrecy Act comes from. That's where KYC, all of these things come from that period. Even the dilution of money, weirdly, it's just a coincidence maybe, but that's where silver is taken out of the money. That's where the money and the financial system of the United States really alters. And that's why here on The Breakup, we love the what happened in 1971 memes. They're great, right? What happened in 1971, hilarious, a lot of fun. But we're actually more interested in the story of Bitcoin, which actually begins in World War II, right? The story of Bitcoin actually goes as far back as Turing and Enigma and using cryptography in World War II to win the war, and then immediately after World War II making cryptography illegal, counting it like a munition or a bomb or a missile, and not allowing anyone to commercially work in that space for 30 years was a major part of the Bitcoin story. But I'd say chapter sort of 1.1, right, the prologue of cryptography is sort of part of the Bitcoin story, but Bitcoin as a requirement to continue civilization, right? Bitcoin as a requirement to continue civilization. That story only begins in 64 with what we're talking about here, right? So with what we're talking about here. The beginning of this 1964 thing is why I started talking about RFK in the first place. I made a prediction right away in November of 2022 that RFK was going to become a huge deal for this exact reason. I said, I don't know other than he's just a participant and involved in the story. I think he's going to make a lot of news because this is an important story. We didn't know he was going to run for president. We didn't know he was going to get into Bitcoin. None of those things, right? It was just this story and the appetite Americans have to end the story and the importance narrative closure has on the JFK assassination for moving into the future, because that's where we saw a lot of this stuff happen. And so yesterday, Daniel shared, and at the time when I made that episode, right, when we had that breakup that morning, I actually read a Bob Dylan song. And the weird thing about this Bob Dylan song, it's called A Murder Most Foul. And the song, we don't know when he recorded it, but here was what was interesting that made me think of the song at the time. So Bob Dylan released this song in the first days of the actual 2-week lockdown back in March 2020, right? So March 2020, Bob Dylan out of nowhere releases a song, and it's this, right? And it's this song called A Murder Most Foul, which really underlines that LBJ and the CIA and the media killed JFK, right? This collusion, everything you're talking about here, everything Martyr made, everything Glenn Greenwald was talking about, everything we saw from Politico, that actual collusion begins in 64, and that's kind of what the song is about. And so here's a fella who broke it all down. His name is MC Armstrong, and as I said, it was Daniel who shared this with me. Super fascinating, really long, so I didn't read the whole thing yet. I kind of sped read a lot of it. I'm not going to give you a total breakdown, but I'll give you the headline here. New nonfiction by MC Armstrong, Murder Most Foul, the role of Lyndon B. Johnson in the murder of JFK. And so they go through he goes through the way I did, sort of different lyrics, right? Like Air Force One, touchdown, the age of the Antichrist has just begun. A lot of these things, right? There is a total follow the money part of the article. Within the article, you can see that they talk about what following the money and means, right? He goes through all the evidence about what happened, business, the money trail here, right? So this shows a little bit about how rich Johnson actually got. LBJ used to laugh about how he, being worth $100 million back in the 60s. And the reason he said he was worth so much money is because his wife owned a radio station. Lady Bird owned a radio station. And he said she did really well with the radio station, was super successful, right? But everyone knew he was a crook and a criminal and all of this stuff. And so from then on, you had people saying, well, this is someone who is got a lot of problems, right? He's got a lot of problems, but no one's going to have to pay attention. No one ever talked about it, right? He went on and was just like, he died a few years later. LBJ didn't have a long life, and he died a few years out of office and only served the one term, right? He only served the 64 to 68 term, but the damage that he did and the damage and the precedent that he set and the systems he put in place are exactly what we see now, right? It's what has led to broken brains. It's what's led to people like Sam Harris, right? Now, Sam Harris, look, yesterday he goes on again and probably said so he's on another podcast now, right? We talked about the one he had the other day. And he came out yesterday talking about RFK, right? And I remember how I said I continue to think it's at the center of the story. So one of the important parts of the story, of the song, of the Bob Dylan song, and one of the lyrics is they'll mock you and they'll laugh at you, something along those lines, right? They're not going to be nice about all of this, right? Anyone who asks questions about this is going to get mocked, is going to get treated really cruelly, and is going to be treated as a basically an idiot, right? So yesterday you had Sam Harris create this situation where he made this long speech, right? Imagine where the vaccines work perfectly and the virus is much more deadly, and just a completely insane scenario, right? So Dave Smith, who's a comedian and part of the libertarian movement-ish, had the following breakdown. It wasn't real, but this is what he said. This is his paraphrasement. Imagine if everything was completely different, then things would be different. Imagine if COVID had a 100% death rate and the vaccine was perfectly safe. RFK looks pretty stupid now, right? Because he goes into it on RFK. Now, this just looks like, I'm not sure if this is Trump derangement syndrome or if he is having cognitive decline. You can't really tell the difference, right? But even, everyone laughing at his intelligence today. You have Ben Askren, who's a regular speaker at Bitcoin events, says the following: "It seems wild that people considered him an intellectual at one point. I mean, holy moly, does he sound like an idiot?" Now, you can clip things and make people sound like an idiot, but don't bother listening to the whole thing. He's a moron, right? Not that smart. So this idea here is, I think, what is gonna catch on, right? The appetite for the end of this story, the appetite to find out how media and the national security apparatus became so intertwined, I think gets to the heart of the RFK campaign and why there is a demand, and of course the Trump campaign too, right? So these things aren't going away. We're going to keep talking about them. We're going to keep sort of, I think, laughing at people who continue to insist that, oh, it's RFK who's stupid, right? And remember, we've said it many times. We don't think RFK is right about many things. I think he's wrong about most of the things he talks about. Now, when I say wrong, I think he's wrong about being worried about a thing, so he doesn't actually believe it, right? Being worried about vaccines doing this. He's not anti-vaccine. He's not saying don't use this vaccine. He's saying don't use that. He's just saying, why don't we test them? Why don't we make safe vaccines, right? Are they safe? We don't know. That's the problem. So I'd say that the things he worries about, I think probably across the board, they can't all be really, truly a risk, right? He can't be right about all of it. But that doesn't matter. He's asking the right questions. It's asking the questions that's the reason why people support him, not because he's right. No one's betting on him being right about stuff. I think we all acknowledge he could be wrong, but no one's even asking these questions, and that's what makes it important, right? And if you don't ask the questions, you're not going to get there. And that's why we end up in this world where spying and money and news are all the same subject. Spying, money, and news in the fiat system are the same subject. They're not a different subject. They're all one subject. And only Bitcoin sort of starts to separate this thing into its constituent pieces so that we can at least start getting around and dealing with this stuff one thing at a time. But the good news is, go back to what Martyr Maid said, it's irreparable, right? It's irreparable. I don't think the media is savable. I don't think a lot of the government apparatus is savable. It's just got to be destroyed. And in many, many ways, what RFK is also talking about with the what do you call it? With the drug cities, right? He's been talking about these drug cities, and Trump's been talking about freedom cities and building new cities. And with all that's going on in our system, did you hear this news? This is kind of funny news. Putin has started building a city in Russia for Canadian and American people to go and get away from all the craziness of our societies. So here's the thing. This is from Yahoo News. So it's being presented as, look at how stupid they are. But here's what's going on. Russia is floating an idea to build a village for hundreds of American and Canadian families who want to run away from cultural climate in North America. The village, slated for construction in Moscow suburbs in 2024, is meant for conservative families who want to emigrate for ideological reasons, said immigration lawyer Timur Beslengarov. Around 200 families have expressed interest in the project. Talking about this in St. Petersburg. Many of the families don't have Russian roots, but are tired of inculcation of radical values in the US and Canada. Today, they have 70 genders. It is not known what will happen next. He added, it is not known what will happen next. Most of the expats who want to move to the village are Catholics and strongly believe in the prediction that Russia will remain the only Christian country in the world. The village project has been greenlit by authorities, and the new settlers will pay for the construction. Insider could not independently verify the claims when contacted, blah, 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 blah. So Richard Hanania says, Russia building a village for Americans and Canadians to get away from 70 genders. Although few will actually move, I'm afraid some right-wingers will cheer the effort. They'll end up looking as silly as those who were once useful idiots for communism. But Darren Beatty answers, the people who would most benefit from leaving the U.S. are not conservative families, but young men. and not so much for ideological reasons as cost of living lifestyle factors. Young men should live abroad for a few years, not Russia, but Portugal, Argentina, Uruguay, Vietnam, maybe Dubai, and decide for themselves how much of America is a scam. Now, indeed, it was a big help for me to live outside of North America. I lived in France when I was really young. I lived in Korea when I was young, young as a young man. I wasn't with my family. I was on my own. I moved to those places alone. I've lived in Japan, and I've sort of traveled all around the world on a number of occasions, and can confirm you learn a lot about what a scam North America is, but you learn about the good things too. But I've never loved North America more than when I lived abroad, and I'm quite convinced it's the only place I would ever live. Right? Like, I love all these other places to visit, and I kind of embrace the chaos of North America at the same time. But look at what else is going on in our own cities, right? Look at these numbers in New York, right? The murder rates, and so weirdly, New York is the only city that even breaks it down by racial group, right? That's not happening across America because it would look bad, and no one wants to talk about it. And Scott Adams here has a really good case of talking about this tragedy. And here's what he says. He says, the causes of this rolling tragedy include building density for easy hiding, teachers' unions destroying education, local corruption, ineffective crime policies, addiction, media, brainwashing, race-based elections, family destruction, diet, sleep patterns, and lots more. What's wrong is everything. Maybe we need to build new cities from scratch. Better city design solves a lot. In other words, try it in a small town is a design statement, right? And I think that's right. Try it in a small town is a design statement. And because indeed, if everyone's looking at each other, if people have more time preference to actually get to know all their neighbors, they're not in some gratification society, they're not in some dopamine addicted binge, everything starts to change. And I think you could save all American cities by almost abandoning them. And I kind of predict that's what's going to happen. I kind of predict that we're going to abandon these places and try it in a small town being a design statement. You get Russia trying it. We've talked a lot about Trump's Freedom City competition. So I believe that one of those cities in the Trump Freedom competition, so if he becomes president, he's going to have a design competition for 10 new cities. And I believe of those 10, at least one of them is going to be a Bitcoin citadel. And indeed, I've been thinking about Bitcoin citadels for a long time. I've been thinking about just the design principles of a new city. And you get Elon Musk building Freedom City in Texas, which I think is going to be one of the prototypes for the 10 freedom cities that Trump is working on. But then you also get what I think of as the more practical short-term city solution, which is what RFK is talking about all the time, which is the rural cities to put all the drug people and the broken brains and the people who are having a tough time in Portland and New York, everywhere, wherever, San Francisco, all over the United States. I've been to a bunch of American cities, even the best of them, right? I've been in Texas in the past couple of years, complete shitholes, even the cities. Miami, total shithole. Florida's doing great. I mean, these places are doing the best, but it's still a complete and total shithole. Filthy, disgusting, violent, rough, rude. No one gives a shit. No neighborly nothing, right? Just a bunch of asshole, selfish people running around, everybody on drugs. And that's what I see, right? Is it because I've been primed to see it? Yeah, I mean, you can go in all these cities and get nice stuff, right? There's nice parts. I've been in all the nice parts recently in South Beach. Yeah, sure. There aren't homeless people on every street. It's true, right? But anywhere that's practical and supposed to be a public space is just filled. It's just filled with trouble. So how are we going to solve it, right? I think those design principles, and that's where Bitcoiners become really interesting, because Bitcoiners are already becoming way more interested in how we live our individual lives and how we eat and how we exercise and all of these things, right? One of the main things that distinguishes Bitcoiners from crypto people, it's not really a paradigm shift. It's just different style, right? It's just high tops versus low top shoes. It's not really a big difference. It's the same game, right? It's playing basketball and tennis sneakers. It's not really changing things. Of course, Bitcoin, because it does get into time preference and psychology and how we organize ourselves and how we organize our society and what are the results of separating money and state, which we're about to experience, right? That's the big difference here. And that's what allows Bitcoiners to, I think, start talking and seeing things on this scale, right? Seeing things on the Citadel scale, on restarting countries, city states, whatever it is we're doing. And you're seeing it in El Salvador. I think you're going to see it all over. I think you're going to see it in places like Russia. Wherever Bitcoiners sort of are forced to settle, they're going to start building these things. And that's why this idea of try that in a small town, it would never work, right? Bitcoiners are not going to let you get away with all of these things, right? It's just not going to happen. If they're building a city, it's not going to have psyops built in. It's not going to have brainwashing so you don't ask questions about what's going on, right? It's a simplification of many things. And I don't think you're going to have to sort of read through the tea leaves to get any of this info. You're going to be able to access it very quickly. So look, I think these citadels are on the way. Weirdly, I think this is going to be the main industry of the 2030s. I think 2030s, the whole point of the 2030s is going to be, look, we built a new city. We built a new city. There's a new one coming. There's a greater one. This one's financed by them, and da 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 da. It's going to be like that all over the place. And the old cities, I think will just rot or what. The only way we can save them, the only way we go back to them is if we get some real breakthrough in industrial materials, some nanotech, 3D printed type of spray or something that you can put onto buildings and structurally fix them without too much expertise or skill or technique. Maybe that could do it. So there is a way to save them, but I think we're going to need a pressure valve, and I think you're going to get experimental cities and new cities from scratch, just like Putin is offering. I think Putin thing might work here for young single men. I think it might happen, right? All right, let me see some comments, and then it's a bit of a shorter one today because I have my mother on her way, and I've got to go to the garage with my car. I have to fix the suspension. Well, this is the one thing, homemade earning. Yeah, you can always opt out by earning. More jobs will become available that pay. It's actually gone down. It's actually gone down. It was easier to get paid in Bitcoin 10 years ago, like really easy. You know, you could get, I've mentioned it before, in the early days of Bitcoin Magazine, you got paid 1 Bitcoin per article, like for real. That was the pay in 2015. So there you go. Let me see. I am glad to see you got your... Thanks, Flash. I was wondering, in your opinion, do you think folks our age and younger will be able to opt out of paying the Ponzi scheme? Yeah, I don't think so. Flash, I've been predicting for a long time. The Social Security system, I understand the IRS was created, and I think we're going to talk about the 1871 here in a second. I saw Tommy bring up 1871. We'll talk about that in a second. The Social Security system, as we know it with income tax, came about at the same time as the Federal Reserve. And I've predicted since 2013, that was like one of the first things I was predicting, looking deeply into Bitcoin and talking to people about it, was guess what? They're going to die together. The Federal Reserve and the Social Security system will die together. And I can even remember, you know, I remember talking to Vitalik and a few others about this at Decentral, which was an office in Toronto where I worked out of when I quit the Senate job. I hadn't quit yet. I was still in the Senate. And that was one of the things I was hearing. What about taxes? What about taxes? So I wanted to figure out, I wanted to get my mind around it. So that, and in those days, you could go to this co-work space, and Vitalik was writing for Bitcoin Magazine and would just be sitting there. You know, what about how do we do the taxes thing, right? And everyone said we can scam a way to make taxes look clear at first. Oh, it's easy to pay taxes with Bitcoin. Don't worry about it, right? But of course, it's a switch that can be turned on and off. So everyone had already thought it through, Vitalik and all these other people. So we thought it would go down in the long term. Good morning, everyone. Hey, Nolan, have you watched Return to Oz? It was a simulation wing for me as it came out on my birthday, and that was how I ended up finding it. I didn't. Homemade. I watched Return to Oz several times as a kid. I do not remember enough of the story. I should watch it again. I didn't mind. I didn't mind the Oz the Great and the Powerful that came out. A lot of people hated it. I didn't mind it. Let me know what you thought, Bitcoin Graffiti. That was with James Franco and was the sort of origin story of the Wizard of Oz. It was okay. I mean, it was entertaining. I can tell if I love a movie if I watch it by how many times I watch it. I've only watched that movie once, so I must not have been a huge fan, but I remember liking it at the theater. But I should read Return to Oz at some point, or at least watch it. But I remember watching it several times as a kid, and I did not like it. And I think that was most kids, but I was a kid, so it just wasn't the same old movie. Oh, by the way, Bitcoin Graffiti gave me. So I was asking the other day about how Wizard of Oz is a story about personal responsibility and finding the light within or whatever. And Bitcoin Graffiti shared the greatest answer ever. Of course, you have to find your own courage, intelligence, wisdom, all of these things. The guy behind the curtain only gives out degrees. He's not giving you any of those things, right? And it was such a simple way to put it, and that's really what's going on here, right? That is why and remember, in the Wizard of Oz, the wizard is purely a politician, right? Why do we know that? Because he does the typical politician's game, and we should never expect more politicians than this. It's a quid pro quo. It's a tit for tat, right? You do for me, I do for you. That's the deal they get with him in the end. And in the end, he doesn't give them shit, right? And they give him everything. They give him the broom, and if you believe the analogies and read Wizard of Oz as a analogy of the banking sector at the time. And if you don't know these stories, basically the ruby red slippers are silver on gold, the follow the yellow brick road, silver on gold. Bimetallism was the main political debate of the 1890s. And the bankers were against the silver market. They wanted to be able to manipulate gold and therefore the greenback. And for those reasons, the politicians didn't like them anymore, and they brought populism in as a tornado, a chaotic force. And the populists were unleashed on the bankers. And in the end, only the politicians came out on top. And that's more or less the story, right? The wizard, the politician, sends the people, the populist people, to get the power of the witches who are the banks in the story. And so basically destroy the power of the witches, of the banks, and I'll give you what you need. A very political argument. And in the end, they don't get what they asked for. They get bullshit until they realize they don't need his bullshit, that it's inside of them from the beginning. And that's more or less the Bitcoin lesson, right? That's what we're all experiencing here. That's why Bitcoin Graffiti has been a long time Wizard of Oz, Wizard of Oz as a more or less a map to get out of fiat and into a Bitcoin standard psychologically. And I think it's accurate. I think it is accurate. So have not read or watched it in a while. Sort of remember it was depressing. I remember that. I remember it being dark and depressing. And no one was alive. Everyone was frozen or something. That's what I remember correctly. Oh, Sean gives us the actual rundown. Lincoln, tallest. LBJ, second. Trump for tall. I didn't know that. Yeah, I thought Obama beat Lincoln. I thought Obama was 6'4". I could be wrong. I've never met Obama. I've seen him walk down a hallway close enough, but I don't really remember his height. I did not wait in line to meet him as other people did when he came to Ottawa. I did not. Good morning, Jevy. Good morning. Good morning. Tommy says, what happened in 1971 is most relevant. You'll have to let me know what you mean about it. 71, lots happened, right? All right. MK, give the man a like. We love likes. We love thumbs up. We're big fans. Smash the like, fam. CK in the house. CK, give me a call. Let's catch up. Memorial just outside of Austin /LBJ. Well, that's where he's from, right? Ranmore. He was from. That's why Lady Bird. Isn't it called the Lady Bird River or something? Isn't it named after her? I've been to Austin a bunch, and always every time I see an LBJ reference. one of the most disgusting American people that ever lived. Germans long ago moved to Russia, still under Catherine the Great. Yeah, I met. So I had a really great friend when I lived in France who was from Munich, and a real Bavarian, and a big Boy Scout hiker. He'd hiked all around the world and was just a great fella. And he would go and visit all of these old communities, these old these old German communities through Romania, Ukraine. He would do all these trips. That was like his big hobby, was to go visit weird, estranged German colonies all around the world. And so I had no idea. I had no clue. And they're still all around. They don't speak a lick of it. And he goes, it would be funny because we just arrived there. And it's kind of like Quebec is to France, but like way less civilized, obviously. Quebec is a modern place, but still, if you're looking for the analogy of the language in Quebec, it's like a time capsule. When people say, "Oh, whenever anyone who doesn't speak French will say to you, "Oh, can the French people even understand Quebecers?" Or do they make fun of your French, or is the French no good or something? Quebec French is like way more, has way more integrity than France French. It's way more French than France French. Way more. It's not even close. You can say this is a French sentence in France. Ce week-end, je vais faire de shopping, mais il faut trouver de parking. I think you can all understand that, right? Ce week-end, je vais faire de shopping, mais il faut trouver de parking. You can get what I'm saying, right? In Quebec, it's ce fin de semaine, je vais magasiner, mais il faut trouver de stationnement. Not even in the same planet. Like, it's all French words, all made up French words. They're all made up. Verb of a store, made up word, but it's French. And so Quebec is like a time capsule. Like, even the words are old, right? We would say things like, I had a French girlfriend when I moved to France. Well, I dated a French girl, not really a girlfriend. I told her one morning, I have to go buy new souliers, which is a Quebec word for shoes, right? But in France, that's like old French, and it's like saying I have to buy knickers today or something. She was calling her friends that morning, tell them what you said to me. It's so cute. Tell them what you said, right? And I would say, mais il faut que j'achète des souliers, right? Because all the words in Quebec are like old French words, really old, and they never change them. And the way I often describe Quebecois, it's not American is to English as Quebecois is to French, French. It's more like Quebec is like Scotland. Like, it's like some hybrid and old form that didn't change, and now we have this situation. So there you go. The DC Organic Act. I got to check that out. Is that like a birth thing? Is that what formalized being born? You're going to have to let me know, Tommy. I'm going to check it out, man. I'm going to check it out. Ranmore, see the problem in drugs in big cities. Yeah, I'm going to look into that. Is a Bitcoin IRA worth it? I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think Capenta. Any way you can, until the ETF for sure. Any way you can get it tax free, do it. Right now, all this like KYC and all that, yeah, it's a problem. But I've taken Bitcoin that way before for payment of stuff, and didn't flinch me, So, all right, team, we got to do a short one. My mom should be here any minute, and then I got to head to the garage. Thanks for coming. I will check it out on Disney Plus. And Tommy says Wizard of Oz and the movie Wizards. Yeah, the movie Wizards. We love it. All right, team. Thanks again, Tommy. It's looking good up here, the breakup. I think that thing's looking great. And I shall see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have another fun morning together, have some coffee, talk about what's new. Hope you all have a great day. Peace.